Meeting called to order. Roll call, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, you don't have any.
Mr. Hines.
Present.
Mr. Kovacic.
Here.
Mr. Mitchell. Mrs. Saunders Smith.
Present.
Mr. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Smith. All right, you have a quorum.
Okay, well, we'll begin by, good morning, everybody, first of all. We'll begin by reviewing the September 17th minutes, and after we review, we can, they were sent to you yesterday, a couple of days ago, and we can vote to, I'll entertain a motion on those.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of the minutes as presented.
Second.
Properly moved to second.
All right, so Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Mr. Kovacic.
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
And motion carries.
Also, in our joint meeting with PIDC, Portsmouth, PPIC, asked for entertain a motion on that meeting as well. Very short minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of the minutes of the shared meeting with DPIC.
Second.
Properly moved to second. Roll call.
Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Mr. Kovacic.
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith. Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Audit report inspected. She here?
Yes. We have with us Mrs. Edoff from Cherry Beckert. You have your annual audit that is done each year. Ms. Beckert, Miss Edoff. I always do that. Miss Edoff from Cherry Beckert will present the audit for you.
Good morning. So thank you all for being here. I'm here to present the results of the June 30, 2019 audited financial statements. You have a copy in front of you along with a letter that we issue as required communications that result as part of the audit. So the financial statements essentially are your financial statements. They're prepared in conjunction with economic development and the finance department. The presentation is fairly simple. It starts with what's called a management's discussion and analysis, which is just a synopsis, summary version of the financial statements in a Word version. It tells you the highlights of what happened financially during the year, and just gives a summarized overview, current year to prior year financial statements. So if there's one thing you're going to look at within these financial statements, that's probably the most relevant to you. Let's see what happened during the year. Let's compare the results to prior year. And again, it's just that high-level summarized version of the financials. Subsequent to the MD&A section, you do have your several pages of the actual financial statements. And then behind that, you have footnotes, which talk about the accounting policies and maybe provide a little bit more detailed information about some of the information that is included in the financial statements. One thing I do want to bring to your attention on page 18, there is the disclosure of this lease for rental office space. It was brought to our attention that while the Economic Development Authority did pay for that lease during fiscal year 19, the lease is actually with the city and going forward will be paid by the city's economic development. So we've been asked to revise and remove that footnote. It doesn't change ultimately the financial statements or the numbers presented. So we do want to ask that when you approve, if you approve the financials today, you approve it contingent on the revision to that footnote. So with that, I'll just talk briefly about the overview of our financial statements. Audit, we did not have any disagreements with management. We did not have any difficulties in conducting the audit. In conducting our audit, we did not propose any audit adjustments. If we did, then we'd be required to bring that to your attention. Also during the audit, we did not, we're required to look at your internal control environment. We do not test that internal control environment, but we do need to analyze it to make sure that ultimately there are processes in place to ensure that the numbers reported in your financial statements are correct and accurate. So if in that understanding of internal controls, any matters were to come to our attention where we felt that there was an issue with correctly reporting the financials, we would also bring that to your attention. In addition, during our audit, we're required to test certain laws and regulations that you have in Virginia. Some of those would be how you hold your cash and investments. There's certain legal investments that you can and cannot invest in. We have conflicts of interest of the commissioners. We also have the procurement laws. So anything you purchase is subject to the Virginia Public Procurement Act. So we make sure you're in compliance when you're spending your money. So again, if during that testing any matters of non-compliance were to come to our attention, we'd have to report those to you. So I am pleased to report that we did not have any audit adjustments. We did not have any deficiencies reported in internal control, and we did not have any non-compliance matters during our testing. So ultimately, that is the best result you would hope for in an audit, which brings me to essentially the conclusion of the audit report, which is an unmodified opinion. That is a clean opinion. So again, the best result you could hope for as part of an audit. Just a couple other things I'm required to talk to you about in the letter. There were no changes to the accounting standards from last year to this year, which might impact the presentation of numbers or how something is accounted for in the financial statements. Additionally, we're required to be independent of the city and the Economic Development Authority. That's likened to your conflict of interest, so that means there's no bias or family relationships or some other relationship that would cause us to give you an audit opinion that essentially you didn't warrant. Lastly, as a result of the audit, we do ask that management provide us a letter of representation telling us that they answered our questions truthfully and honestly, that they provided us all of the information that we asked for, and that the numbers reported in the financial statements are clean and accurate. So management did provide us with that letter as of September 30, which is the date of the financial statements. So that is the result of our audit for the year, and we'll take any questions that you might have.
I have one quick question. How many other EDAs in this region do you audit, if any?
Essentially everyone for the localities that we audit here. So Chesapeake has one, Hampton has one, Newport News has one. We previously audited City of Virginia Beach. City of Suffolk has one. So those just kind of locally.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So clean audit is no questions.
So we do ask that you turn these copies back in because we're going to make that one revision to the footnote.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to accept the audit, subject to the footnote correction.
Move for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and
Adoption,
seconded.
clarification. Move adoption with the
Subject to the
exception,
footnote.
subject to the footnote.
Yes.
Okay.
Hines,
Yes.
Mr. Kovacic,
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith, Mr. Scott,
Yes.
and Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
motion carries.
September 2019 financials. Ms. Who?
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
And I'm just going over a quick overview of September financials. As of September 30, the total cash and temporary investment were $1,398,812. Total current asset, which is include security deposit receivable and other receivable, were $4,084. Total capital asset were $1,205,661. Total other asset, which is property held for resale, were $6,728,963. Total asset as of September 30 were $19,337,519. Total liability as September 30 were $5,270,825. Total net position were $14,066,694. For the income statement, which is next page, the total operating expenses for the month of September were $29,278, and the net total non-operating loss was $7,771. Total reduction in that position for month of September was $37,040. And we're going to skip Schedule A and B, and I want to mention about the total incentive grant for the month of September. As of September 30, the total amount to be awarded were $191,130. And the total amount to be paid for the for FY20 was $193,103. I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hines, Commissioner Hines?
Thank you. Nothing about the numbers here, but in review, I did see in the document several places September 31st.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah,
So when you go to file that for audit, if you'll make that.
Yeah, we're going to
correction.
make a change. We have a new person doing it, and she made the changes on another template, but forgot to make all of them. Yeah.
That's fine. I just.
Okay,
before we
thank you for
file-
pointing out.
Thank you.
Not 31 days in September?
No, there's
Only
not.
31. And I was joking.
We really need extra days
Yeah.
these days, but that's not the case.
We don't need extra days. We want this thing to be over with. Any other comments?
Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Hoover? Okay. This will be filed for audit. No vote necessary. Any old business?
No.
All right, moving on, new business. Mr. Hines had asked us to place on the agenda a poverty study discussion, and spoke to Mr. Moore, and I've spoken with Mr. Hines, and I think I'll let Mr. Hines take it from here.
Thank you both for allowing me to have this opportunity to discuss about this. This was actually something that was presented to the city council in between our last couple meetings here. And I wanted just to encourage our commissioners, if we haven't done so already, to read through this report. It's a pretty detailed report. It's mentioned, and economic development's mentioned 17 times in this report. There's some call to actions from us, along with our city council, along with our school board, along with those deals, especially in workforce development. And I keep talking about workforce development. I think if anything else, during my time here, you will know that I am a champion of workforce development. And we need to make sure that we get serious about that. It even calls out a number of cities who have gone through a very similar process, gone through, so I think there's some lessons here. And I just wanted to take just a minute to just encourage everybody to read through this and to partner. Our charge here as EDA is naturally we have state powers, but we also are a partner with our city council. And this was a big initiative for them. And I'd like to make sure that as you guys go through your budget cycle, I won't get the chance to weigh in this year, but I would encourage the remaining commissioners to continue to champion that cause and to see where we can do to help in this. So that's pretty much all I had here. I just wanted to make sure all the commissioners knew that this happened, this took place. It's very good reading, and it's definitely worth your time, especially as we make land acquisition, property acquisition decisions, to know the zones in which we are purchasing. A lot of our focal and focused areas in the past have been in these zones, literally just miles down the road. There's significant poverty. So as we make those selling decisions, as we make those development decisions, we probably need to keep that in mind as well. That's really all I had. Thank you for the opportunity to
Any
speak.
comments? I'll say this. I think, at least for the last couple of years, I think EDA has been focused on workforce development, which is something that had not previously been in their portfolio. They have developed that portfolio around workforce development. That's an area of concern for all of us. And I think they're doing a good job. And I think hopefully they will take some of the recommendations from the poverty study and implement those things. I think there are some things that we can do and continue to place on the agenda if we can look at some of the recommendations or the calls of action, as you say, in that report, and maybe bring those back to to the EDA, based on some of those recommendations, to see what you're doing that align with those things, and that would make us probably feel a lot more comfortable and make Mr. Hines or Commissioner Hines know that we are moving in the right direction in regard to those workforce development initiatives that were placed in that poverty study. I mean, I think that we have a lot of areas of concern based on that study. Finally, at least we're not, I hate to say it like this, but at least with this, we're not last in that area in the region. I mean, I think our poverty rate is high. Norfolk's a little higher. And I think we're in a competitive position that we can change that around. I mean, I think we have the resources and assets here to really implement some good programs here and do some things. Because I think a part of it is also with our workforce housing that we need to look at too. So I think those things go hand in hand, and I think we're doing a lot in the residential area to address that.
We have a number of those tracts that were identified as high poverty, again, are, in places that we have properties. The places were identified as underemployment in this study are areas that we have, and when I say we, I'm not talking about just economic development, which we do,
City.
but the city, the school board. These are areas that and resources that we have. One of them is right there at IC Norcom High School. If you look right in the middle of those 3 tracks, it's right there. So, I guess part of this is I encourage my fellow commissioners, but I'm also using this forum also as an opportunity to encourage my city to take this seriously and to, set aside differences, set aside whose lane it's in and who's this, but to truly partner together, because this is very important for our city. Again, thank you for allowing me to have the platform.
Thank you. Any other comments on this subject?
Well, I'll comment.
Thank you, Councilman.
We're good at talking the talk, but when it comes to some of those things, we haven't been so good at walking the walk. And for instance, we can't run from the fact that we have the highest unemployment rate in the state. In fact, there's some ranking that I ran across just this week, the 45 worst cities to live in, and I don't agree with that ranking, but it's out there. It's being viewed by probably millions of people, and they base that on one thing, which is kind of sad that they would use one criteria to say you don't want to live there, and that was on the unemployment rate. Which they labeled as the worst in the state. Workforce housing. Just over a year ago, we came close to rejecting workforce housing development. And I came close to rejecting it, quite frankly. Before, thanks to some citizens who spoke to it and me doing some soul searching on it. But we've got to get better in that. There's, if you're going to do it, jobs is the ultimate answer. That's the hand up, not the hand out. But we haven't been so good in those areas. We got to get better. We got to focus on it, especially with hopefully some new revenue sources coming in. We have to apply some of that revenue to solutions, if you may.
Thank you, Councilman. Anyone?
Thanks for initiating the discussion, Anthony.
You're welcome. And I think the other thing is, if you read between the lines of this report, and even in some cases, underemployment is just as bad as unemployment.
Absolutely.
And I think we're just missing out on so many potential opportunities, so many potential partnerships. One hand is going one way, one hand is going the other way. And if we were all to kind of say, let's all get serious and pool our resources and say, let's talk about a real discussion about workforce development. Just got the school board doing their CTE thing, and that's great and all. But I don't think EDA has given an awful lot of direction of where the vision we're wanting to go. So if we're going to say we're going to get behind the ports, that's going to be our thing, then maybe we need to put those partners together so that we're not putting that resource into something that maybe the school system could go through the VDOE and actually get a certified CTE class approved, so where they can actually start working hand in hand here with things. I think for too long, we've kind of all worked in our own little silo. And I think this should be a wake-up call to us, that we've got a real problem, we've got a real issue. But I think we're poised, like you said, with some resources and some willpower to get behind this and do this. But we got to take that next step.
One more.
Commissioner Smith.
I could go on an hour about this subject. I think this is something that we might want to consider at our retreat, where we got more time to deal with it, because there's a lot of factors here and a lot of philosophies. There's a lot of mindsets that are just out of skew. And
Oh, I agree with you 100%. This is not we could sit here until noon today talking about this.
Right. But I want us to come back to it. I don't want us to just blow by it.
I guess, naturally I asked for this opportunity as it's one of my last 3 meetings to make sure that this conversation doesn't die.
You can come back.
I can come back for the observer?
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Saunders Smith.
I wanted to make comment on that as well. I think that at the last meeting, the authority was talking about ways in which they could assist us, and certainly workforce development is one of that. And I have been attending the Let's Talk Business sessions that they have on Friday, which has been very informative, actually. And one of the themes was the lack of having sufficient people to put in positions. They have positions and they don't have people, because of this development. So I don't know how we as a commission can be effective in making sure that something is happening along that way, but I do think it's something we should definitely focus in on.
I mean, if that's an issue too, I think, I'm watching the clock too, but, I think the Hampton Roads Workforce Development Commission over here, what's his name? Sean Avery and his team over there, I think we need to plug in with that. I mean, we also have to do our own thing, because I do think Portsmouth has kind of been neglected from those larger organizations that help the region. I think we have to plug in with those organizations and make sure that we get our share of those resources, because how they're funded is based on the poverty rate and the unemployment rate combined. And if how they're funded is based on the poverty rate and the unemployment rate, then I think Portsmouth should have a substantial amount of those resources. And I don't know how much of a presence, how large of a presence they have here. When I was doing workforce development every day in my other life, they didn't have a huge presence here. We had to make them open up a youth program on High Street for a while, and then that ended up going away. So I would like to see how we're partnering with them. I think there's a lot of different ways that we can leverage what we already have with some of the other resources they have, so we're not reinventing the wheel and trying to carry this on ourselves. I think a lot of folks don't understand how important Portsmouth is to the region. And I think we get, with the tolls and all the other issues, people like that's just Portsmouth. But they don't realize Portsmouth is central to the success of the region. And if Portsmouth goes down, everybody's going to go down. So they all need to be making sure that they're making sure that they're supporting Portsmouth with some of these regional organizations. Because I don't think we have the tax base. As the poverty rate, as the poverty study showed, we don't have the tax base. And with the tolls being there, we're losing revenue annually. So we need some other resources from not just from within Portsmouth, and we need to get those resources here.
And if I could just have one more final comment on that, is I know that there probably will be a task force or a group that's put together by City Council.
Hopefully somebody from here will be on
I
that
was going to
task force.
request, I think maybe our chairman or whoever the appropriate person, but I think we should have somebody there to show that we're serious about this and to be able to report back to this body. I know it's a much larger conversation and probably one that I won't be a part of, but it is one that I think we certainly need to very much be a part of and report back even at every single meeting. I think it's that important that every meeting that they have, we should be there. Somebody should be there, for that. So,
Councilwoman?
I would, 2 things. Number one, I would recommend, because the city clerk is keeping a list, as citizens have been contacting members of council about this. You recall one of the things that the presenter said was in these different groups that should be established, there should be a subject matter expert, in each one, so that, they are moving down the right track. But
if the chairman would send an email, it doesn't have to be anything formal, but maybe an email to the city clerk
I will.
today while you're thinking about it, because I know you got a few other things on your mind, that you would like to, for someone, would like to be able to appoint someone to something to do with workforce development from the Economic Development Authority going forward. That will also remind the city council when we get to this that we need to hold a slot there,
Okay.
because I think that is a really important idea.
Okay.
Number two, when you were talking about workforce housing, and
got that, Bob?
Mr. Moody was talking about how we voted about a year ago, could I ask Ms. Winston to give us an update on the Woda property? Because I heard they got their tax
They
credits.
received the tax credits, so they're moving forward. Construction should probably begin early 2020.
Congratulations, that's great. See, workforce housing, baby, we need it. I think Mr. Moore had a comment before we turn this down.
I had a comment, but I think you all have said it all. At the end of the day, this is something that we hold near and dear as we continue to ramp up our efforts to expand the tax base here in Portsmouth and bring in new jobs. Yes, we need to make sure that when we create a job, that each job can be filled with a Portsmouth resident. But not just when we create a job, when a job is created in the region, that it can be filled with a Portsmouth resident. So I think it's very timely that we have this conversation. It's very timely with the study coming out, with the audit as well, because while we talk about the different resources that that are around, it will take resources more than likely from this body, from council, for Portsmouth to really have a stake in the game, if you will. So we are making those connections. I do think this is a better conversation for the retreat, especially when we have your colleagues from PPIC and that joint retreat. But we are glad to hear that you all are behind this initiative, and again, the Hire Portsmouth initiative that we started a couple of years ago. So thank you for that, and we'll keep moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hines, Commissioner Hines, for bringing this forward.
Absolutely, and one last thing about funding.
I thought your last thing was your last thing.
But you mentioned that about that. And I just want to encourage you to maybe look and investigate the Starbase way they fund that program.
Or the Starbase program.
How they solicit business partners to assist in how they fund out that program on a yearly basis with very limited fiscal impact to the city and to the school board. So that might be a way of helping to not only we're going to need some seed money naturally to get it off the ground, but maybe going forward for future funding. I know one of our great business partners, Simmons, helps with that as well, and a number of others that we call business partners. They would benefit from a quality workforce as well.
So when we go to the retreat and you're not there, we'll probably end up putting you in charge and making sure we get funded.
You can phone a friend.
Phone a friend.
Thank you.
Okay, thank y'all. National Entrepreneurship Month proclamation.
When we talk about Simmons, thank you, sir. When we talk about Simmons, that's a good segue into the month of November. Back in 2012, then President Barack Obama stated that, or initialized November as National Entrepreneurship Month. And this year, National Entrepreneur Day is November the 19th. And if you had seen council, I think the last council meeting, council was very appreciative, and the mayor gave a proclamation for Manufacturing Day and Manufacturing Month, and we'd like to do the same with Entrepreneurship Month. We are slated for the last meeting in October, which I believe is the 22nd, next Tuesday, to have this proclamation. We certainly would like as many commissioners as possible to be there to receive the proclamation at City Council. It will be one of the first things on the agenda that evening. But it's an opportunity for us to really highlight and spotlight entrepreneurs. I mean, with the number of small businesses that we have in this city, and we're talking small, women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned businesses that make up our economy specifically. It's a great opportunity to really highlight them, especially about 2 weeks before the national day is about 2 weeks before what would be Small Business Saturday, and opportunities to then show our support and give our support to some of these businesses. So just want to put this on your radar, on your calendar. Ms. Ogle will be back at the office. We'll send you a request to see how many commissioners could attend that meeting, but we'd like to have as many as possible attend that meeting.
Not to interrupt you, could I request this to maybe just a quick reminder on the Monday before, just
Yes.
to make sure that would be,
Yes.
yes, pencil me in.
The 29th.
Should be the 22nd. I will double check that. I'll double check the council.
The meeting's council's 22nd.
Council's 22nd.
Okay, 22nd, all right.
7 p.m. in council chambers. But we'll send that email out today, and Mr. Hines, I'll put you down, and we will send a reminder that the Monday before.
Okay, we need to go and close meeting.
We do.
Okay. At this time, we're going to go and close and entertain a resolution from Vice Chair.
Okay, I move to go into a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2, 3711A.3 for the purpose of discussing acquisition of publicly held real property interests where discussion in an open meeting would be adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, specifically regarding to 513 Edward Street.
All right, Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Mr. Kovacic,
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith.
Yes.
I guess we had a second.
Oh, sorry.
Did we have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Now we got a second.
All right, thank you.
Let's try this one more time.
Slip.
Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Mr. Kovacic,
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
All right, we are in closed session officially. Give us a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
All right. Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Mr. Kovacic,
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
and then Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
All right, we're in open session.
All right. Back in open session, I believe.
That's it.
Anything for the good of the body? All right. If not, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.